Listen, I know I'm kind of late to the party on this one, but hear me out. Hi, my name's Kimmy and I talk about Formula One in the world's second worst English speaking accent. And yes, I know, there's a lot of stuff going on right now that we could be talking about. We've got Ocon's rumoured imminent announcement. Sainz has apparently decided that he's just gonna stick with regular silly season time schedules and wait things out. Checo is in peril once again. I think we've already heard this story, haven't we? And the embodiment of the worst person you know meme just came out of the closet. But today I'm going to talk about Lando Norris and what happened a week and a half ago. Listen, the last time I remember seeing a Formula One driver look this miserable, excluding Charles Leclerc, because I feel like that's just kind of a cyclical thing at this point, it was Daniel Ricciardo right before he got fired. Which is, frankly, kind of ludicrous, right? Lando is absolutely smashing it. He's consistently been on the podium, he's finally got his win, and he's been up there with a good chance of being on that top step of the podium more often this year than he hasn't. So what gives? Norris, full credit to him, has been extremely upfront about the mental health challenges that come with the job, and also how he handles them. He's gone on record saying bad results can affect him for weeks and that he does tend to get a bit stuck inside his own head sometimes. But then he's used those experiences and his platform to highlight the issue to a wider audience. And I think that's cool. Not only for the advocacy factor, but I always enjoy seeing high-performing sports people show a little bit of vulnerability, you know? It helps us relate and it reminds us that they're just people too at the end of the day. But for Lando, that vulnerability has been ramping up a lot recently. He's never been the kind of guy to shy away from putting the blame on himself, which in and of itself isn't a bad thing. I mean, being honest when you've messed up is kind of important, right? The problem is, Lando has a habit of beating himself up in public when the team is the one that's let him down. And I know a lot of you out there probably think that what happened at Silverstone a couple of weekends ago was mostly on Lando. I think that assessment is misguided. Incorrect even. And I know it can be hard to set aside your biases and look at things objectively for a bit. There's a lot of people out there who don't like Lando for whatever reason, who've revelled in his failures, and pointed out how all of the perceived flaws in his personality are leading to him bottling it when he's within a sniff of a win. But you can't look at this tyre call and say there's not a clear indicator there that McLaren is putting too much expectation on Lando making a decision in the heat of the moment while trying to drive around in tricky conditions at 200 miles an hour. You know, rather than just trusting their data and telling him what they think the right thing to do is. Isn't that what a strategy team's for? I mean, if you want your driver to call all the strategy, then what's the point in having all of these engineers, including, very important job, a tyre engineer? Now, I'm sure you've all listened to the radio. I'm sure you've seen all the comparisons made between Oscar and Lando's transmissions. I'm not going to go over all that again. Nor am I going to go over Sochi 2021 because that's been done to death and it was 3 years ago. Although you kind of can't help but make the comparison. Canada this year, though, is probably a good example, or at least a more relevant one, of making a call a little bit too late and offering up too many options. Or in that case, oversharing too much information. Granted, in Canada, Lando was told by the team that they thought that the medium was the right tyre to finish the race on. However, Will Joseph was reporting that they'd pretty much hit the crossover point 3 laps before they actually eventually brought him in. And unfortunately, that was communicated right before Lando was about to pass pit entry. And by that point, it was too late. George went in front of him on the next lap, and they'd missed their opportunity to undercut. So then their best strategy was to try eking out one more lap to see if they could get just enough time to come out ahead of Max. And to their credit, they made it work. Almost. That extra lap on the inters did actually give them a few tenths. But the back and forth on the radio is what I keep coming back to. The constant reporting of what everyone else was doing, rather than focusing on the data that tells them what the likely best call is going to be for their driver. Lando's side of the garage just kind of seems to operate on vibes rather than on reading the data. Which, you know, is fine when it's on stuff that you need the driver to feed back on. or you know that vibe reading is one of their very specific strengths. It's not so fine when you have hard data about a specific tyre being terrible on a specific circuit, like the soft was for the McLaren at Silverstone. Not that I'm letting Oscar's team off the hook here either. That decision not to double stack was, it was a stinker really, wasn't it? Yeah. Kind of gave me the feeling that they didn't really want their drivers near each other on track. But that's a thought for another day. And sure, this more give me all of the information so that I can make my own decisions kind of style that Will and Lando seem to have going on might be specifically what Lando has said he works best with. It might be how he wants to operate. Maybe he prefers to be more independent in his strategy. But you know, considering his apparent self-awareness with regards to his own personal failings, which he likes to remind us of every time he doesn't execute the exact perfect race, and how he, of his own admission, does tend to dwell on said mistakes, maybe if that's the case, then this style of communication needs reconsidering. Look at Lewis, for example, or Max, or Carlos. They all have this kind of shorthand that they've built up over the years with their engineers. Just, you know, so that they can get this information that they need in the most succinct, efficient manner, and then they can use that information to make a decision based on how they're feeling on track and how it relates to their driving style. At this point, Lando Norris and Will Joseph are in their 6th year of working together as a driver and race engineer pairing. They've had plenty of time to perfect how they make decisions in the heat of the moment, but something about it just isn't quite clicking. And I kind of can't help but wonder if this isn't some kind of indicator of a more broad cultural issue within McLaren. Now I'm going to stick my hand up, right up, and say this is the point where my own internal biases come into play. Very aware of that fact. I am not a big fan of McLaren. You'd think otherwise, considering its founder and namesake. But as I've said before, I'm not the kind of person to lean into patriotic sentimentality. McLaren, to me, stinks of personal ownership culture. Who hurt you, you say? I'm not going to go there. You know, the kind of organisation that will say all the right things, offer up all the right services to be seen doing the right thing, and say they have a no-blame culture. But then when you put your hand up and say you need something to change to be able to thrive, they say you're making excuses to excuse your own lack of performance, and you need to take ownership of that. We're progressive and open to change, but not that kind of change. So you stop asking and instead you just suck it up. Blame yourself when things go wrong, because remember, you need to own it. You spend ages chasing your tail trying to figure out how to fix things that just aren't working, even though deep down you know it's entirely out of your control. Great way to get stuck in an endless cycle of negativity, am I right? And yeah, I could be, and I hope I am, entirely and completely wrong here. Because as I always like to remind myself, we're viewing all of this from the outside, through a very specific, very narrow lens. And if we were on the inside, we sure as heck wouldn't be talking about it on the internet. Not with our names attached anyway. Regardless, I think it's a worrying coincidence that the two people that I have felt genuine concern for in the past couple of years have both been wearing papaya. Different circumstances, sure, but McLaren, not a good look. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please make sure that if you enjoyed it, you give it a like and think about clicking that subscribe button. Every one of those clicks helps my channel, and it helps me even more if you share it with your friends. That'd be really rad. And also, down below in the comment box, I've got a special treat for those of you who made it to the end and passed my little advertising ramble. There's a little Google form down there, and I'd really love it if you could send me through your F1 hot takes. I'll use these to create a little video at some point in the future when I've got enough to go over. It's just for those of you who managed to make it to the end. Thanks so much, you guys are awesome.